The first one was done in New Delhi in 1999. And what we did over there was pretty much simple. I had an office in those days which bordered a slum, an urban slum. So there was a dividing wall between our office and the urban slum. So I cut a hole inside that wall, which is how this got the name hole in the wall, and put a pretty powerful PC into that hole, sort of embedded into the wall so that its monitor was sticking out at the other end. A touchpad similarly embedded into the wall. Put in high-speed internet, put the Internet Explorer there, put it on altavista.com in those days, and just left it there. And this is what we saw. So that was my office in IIT. Here is the hole in the wall. About 8 hours later, we found this kid. To the right is this 8-year-old child who, and to his left is a 6-year-old girl who's not very tall. And what he was doing was he was teaching her to browse. So it sort of raised more questions than it answered. Is this real? Does the language matter? Because he's not supposed to know English. Will the computer last, or will they break it and steal it? And did anyone teach them? The last question was what everybody said, that, they must have poked their head over the wall and asked the people in your office, can you show me how to do it? And somebody taught him. So I took the experiment out of Delhi and repeated it. This time in a city called Shivpuri, in the center of India, where I was assured that nobody had ever taught anybody anything. So it was a warm day. And the hole in the wall was on that decrepit old building. This is the first kid who came there. Later on turned out to be a 13-year-old school dropout. He came there and he started to fiddle around with the touchpad. Very quickly noticed that when he moves his finger on the touchpad, something moves on the screen. And later on he told me, I have never seen a television where you can do something. So he figured that out. It took him over 2 minutes to figure out that he was doing things to the television. And then, as he was doing that, he made an accidental click by hitting the touchpad. You'll see him do that. He did that, and the Internet Explorer changed page. 8 minutes later, he looked from his hand to the screen, and he was browsing. He was going back and forth. When that happened, he started calling all the neighborhood children, like children would, let's say, come and see what's happening over here. And by the evening of that day, 70 children were all browsing. So 8 minutes and an embedded computer seemed to be all that we needed there. So we thought that this is what was happening, that children in groups can self-instruct themselves to use a computer and the internet. But under what circumstances? At this time, there was the main question was about English. People said, you really ought to have this in Indian languages. So I said, what? Have what? Shall I translate the internet into some Indian language? That's not possible. So it has to be the other way about. But let's see, how do the children tackle the English language? I took the experiment out to northeastern India, to a village called Madantusi, where for some reason there was no English teacher. So the children had not learnt English at all. And I built a similar hole in the wall. One big difference in the villages as opposed to the urban slums, there were more girls than boys who came to the kiosk. In the urban slums, the girls tend to stay away. I left the computer there with lots of CDs. I didn't have any internet. And came back 3 months later. So when I came back there, I found these two kids, 8 and 12-year-olds, who were playing a game on the computer. And as soon as they saw me, they said, we need a faster processor and a better mouse. so I was a little surprised about, how on earth did they know all this? And they said, well, we picked it up from the CDs. So I said, but how did you understand what's going on over there? So they said, well, you've left this machine which talks only in English, so we had to learn English. So then I measured, and they were using 200 English words with each other, mispronounced but correct usage. Words like exit, stop, file, save, that kind of thing, not only to do with the computer but in their day-to-day conversations. So Madantusi seemed to show that language was not a barrier. In fact, they may be able to teach themselves the language if they really wanted to. Finally, I got some funding to try this experiment out to see if these results are replicable, if they happen everywhere else. So we went, I did this for almost 5 years, and this experiment really took us all the way across the length and breadth of India. This is the Himalayas, up in the north, very cold. I also had to check or invent an engineering design which would survive outdoors. And I was using regular, normal PCs. So I needed different climates, for which India is also great, because we have very cold, very hot, and so on. This is the deserts to the west. Near the Pakistan border. You see here a little clip of one of these villages. The first thing that these children did was to find a website to teach themselves the English alphabet. Then to central India, very warm, moist fishing villages where humidity is a very big killer of electronics. So we had to solve all the problems we had without air conditioning and with very poor power. So most of the solutions that came out used little blasts of air put at the right places to keep the machines running. I'm going to just cut this short. We did this over and over again. This sequence is also nice. This is a small child, 6-year-old, telling his elder sister what to do. And this happens very often with these computers, that the younger children are found teaching the older ones. What did we find? We found that 6 to 13-year-olds can self-instruct in a connected environment irrespective of anything that we could measure. So if they have access to that computer, they will teach themselves, including intelligence. I couldn't find a single correlation with anything. But it had to be in groups. And that may be of great interest to this group, because all of you are talking about groups. So here was the power of what a group of children can do if you lift the adult intervention. Just a quick idea of the measurements. We took standard statistical techniques, so I'm going to not talk about that. But we got a clean learning curve, almost exactly the same as what you would get in a school. So I leave it at that because, it sort of says it all, doesn't it? What could they learn to do? Basic Windows functions, browsing, painting, chatting and email, games and educational material, music downloads, playing video. In short, what all of us does. And over 300 children would become computer literate and be able to do all of these things in 6 months with one computer. So how do they do that? If you calculated the actual time of access, it will work out to minutes per day. So that's not how it's happening. What you have actually is, there is one child operating the computer. Surrounding him are usually 3 other children who are advising him on what they should do. If you test them, all 4 will get the same scores in whatever you ask them. Around these 4 are usually a group of about 16 children who are also advising, usually wrongly, about everything that's going on the computer. And all of them also will clear a test given on that subject. So they're learning as much by watching as they learn by doing. So what was the conclusion of all these 6 years of work? Was that primary education can happen on its own, or parts of it can happen on its own. It does not have to be imposed from the top downwards. It could perhaps be a self-organizing system. So that was the second bit that I wanted to tell you, that children can self-organize and attain an educational objective. Natural systems are all self-organizing, galaxies, molecules, cells, organisms, societies, except for the debate about intelligent designer. But at this point in time, as far as science goes, it's self-organization.